Well guys, Ukraine hit the Kerch strait connection. For now it's not the Kerch bridge but again the ferry. The ferry which was used by Russia to transfer oil and military supplies. So let's go to the Kerch strait, and this is the port of Caucasus with some of the oil storages and the railway, plus you may see some of the ships are standing out there. Well, this image is not up to date, so there could be different ships, but from what we know, the Slavenin, one of the biggest Russian ferries, was out there at the moment of the strike. And the ferry looked like that. It was able to transfer lots of the cargo. You can see it's quite big. And this is the latest image of that ferry, so clearly something was on board. So this is the aft part of the ship. It goes all the way like that, and definitely something was there which ship tried to carry to Crimea. An official Russia reported that they've shot down Ukrainian drones once again, this time with their ferry. Well, this strike again tells a lot about the intentions of Ukrainian army, and probably the usage of ATACMS wasn't really agreed with the United States to cut the Kerch bridge connection, so they still refuse to give Ukraine that permission because they don't want to escalate again, but it's just my opinion and my ideas, it couldn't be truth. So Ukraine uses the other ways available to disturb the Russian supplements towards peninsula. Earlier this year, Ukraine has already used some of the drones to hit the ferries in the Kerch Strait, but it seems like the previous strike wasn't enough. But still, the main supply line for the Russian army is the Kerch bridge. They supply everything using it. And for sure, it wasn't built for civilian purposes. Putin wants this bridge for his army. For this reason, for Ukraine, it's critical to cut it off. But as I say to you, I guess that there is no permission given for Ukraine, or the tools which Ukrainian army currently has are not enough to do so. It could be that with F-16s the situation might differ. My friends, if you like the videos which I film daily on my YouTube channel, you might also consider supporting me on Patreon. My Patreon page is available with my personal link just in the video description below. Thank you so much for your motivation. Then YouTube cancels monetization. And to make F-16s more effective in Ukrainian skies, Ukraine daily hits the Russian air defense. Here is one more image of the Russian Buk M2 air defense system, which was hit by probably HIMARS or drone, maybe HIMARS. And we may see that definitely it wasn't a decoy. Also, our guys hit one more Russian Sukhoi-25 attack airplane using the portable manpad. You may see how the rocket flies on top, probably it's Stinger or something like that. And here you may see the zoomed in image, so rocket is very smart and it hit the airplane. Yeah, this way, so it hit it. Russia loses many of the Sukhoi-25 attack airplanes recently, maybe because Ukraine obtained more of the air defense systems and portable manpads. And here we have the screenshot of the particular Sukhoi-25, how it crashed down, and here you can see also the Russian pilot who managed to eject right before the impact, so he survived. But I wonder if he landed on Ukrainian controlled territory or on the Russian controlled one. About the Russian Morozovsk airfield, which Ukraine hit yesterday, well, we have the satellite image, however, it's not that detailed, there are some of the clouds, but we may see all of the areas where Ukraine definitely hit the airfield. The grass burned near the apron, parking stands, and in different areas, including this one, probably here were the Russian air defense systems. And here we see some sort of the eyewitness from Russia is filming the Ukrainian drone flying in Volgograd Oblast. Kind of the poor cameraman job, but anyways, it's the Ukrainian drone for sure. Ukraine has many of those and they're very effective. This particular one hit one of the Russian refineries. As you may see, it flies at quite low altitude, so it's very hard to detect it. Well, it seems like Russia has created a new military base not far away from Ukrainian borders and 200 kilometers away from the front lines, which is roughly 120 miles. According to the satellite images collected, Russia used Novocherkassk military base as their main hub to deliver their military to Ukraine. The Novocherkassk is located not far away from Rostov-on-Don, and Russia has quite good communications and road connections with the occupied territories of Luhansk and Donetsk out there. But according to the information coming from the Russian side from their social media, they recently started to deliver the outdated equipment, very old tanks, very old artillery systems, Russians because the Russian military production is not able to replace their losses. That is what Russians show in their video. This is the artillery system and it's made in 1940. 1940, then even Hitler was alive. They're not very satisfied with it, but they have what they have. And as we see, they lose 4 tanks per day and Russia is capable to produce around 300 tanks per year. I mean good modern tanks. The same we may say about the armored vehicles. Russia just has tremendous losses in Ukraine. And daily they lose more than 1,000 soldiers. For the last week I think it's the record number actually. And in general the Russian army has the record losses this time of the year. They are much more compared to what it was in 2022. And in 2023, the last year, so unfortunately there is the escalation of this war and there are no any signs that it could be stopped in a close perspective. Yeah, you may tell me about Trump, but he will not stop this war, believe me. Only Russia might do it, but they are not willing to withdraw their forces, that's why the war will continue. And if we touch this global politics point, let's speak about it more. For example, the Time came out with an article about Trump and his possible support for Ukraine, so they say that if Trump becomes the next United States president, he will cut the help for Ukraine. He wants to push Zelensky for some sort of the peace agreement, which is more profitable for Russia in this case. So the first 8 up to 10 months of 2025 will be very hard for Ukraine. In this article, Time relies on a Ukrainian official who knows the insides. Nevertheless, that official says that Ukraine will keep the military support from the other allies in the European Union and also the NATO bloc in general. And still, they hesitate to say of what might happen 100%. No one knows what might happen after all, but we should respect the election result of the United States and hope for better for Ukraine. And you know, it's hard to say of who becomes the next United States president. For example, in this article, Reuters rely on the Ipsos poll, and they say that Harris leads Trump 44 to 42%. Well, she's not yet officially a nominee from the Democratic Party. Everything might happen on the way, but it seems like she got the endorsement from the chief Democratic officials and she starts to obtain some of the record help from the donors. So after all, I think that we're gonna see Kamala Harris from the Democratic Party participating in the elections. The election campaign is really crazy and we're gonna see how it goes in the nearby future. And you know guys, Joe Biden is alive. Even Fox News confirmed that. Wow. Yesterday mega opponents were totally angry about Biden's absence, but come on. Come on folks. I think that Biden will live quite a long life without the stress coming from politics. And here's one more video. So Biden is really alive, as you may see. It's alive. He is alive. Interesting news, the United States Secret Service Director Kimberly Chittle, I hope I spelled her surname correctly, has resigned after the agency failed to stop the assassination attempt against Donald Trump. She stepped down after being criticized by the Senate and in general by the public of the United States. And I would say that definitely the job was done poorly to prevent that from happening. They acted well after the shots fired, but before that, no, it was a bad job. So we should expect some of the reforms of the Secret Service. Some of the German military officials say that in around 5 up to 8 years, the Russian forces would have enough equipment and enough power to attack some of the NATO countries. And they give the different numbers, for example, of the Russian tanks production, the modern-day tanks. They say that Russia is able to produce around 1,000 tanks. But guys, those are not always modern tanks. Russia is producing a relatively old T-72, but if we speak about modern versions of T-90, well, it is not more than 300 per year. But nevertheless, the German experts worry about it because they have less tanks combined than Russia has right now. But we may see that the tanks is not the decisive weaponry for now in a modern-day war. They became kind of vulnerable. Nevertheless, they continue to play their own great role, but in general, Russia is unable to attack any sort of the other country right now. Then there is still the war in Ukraine. Maybe in this way the war is kind of profitable for some of our allies, because Russia just bogged down in Ukraine, losing its army constantly, and Ukraine obtains just enough weaponry to continue this war, not to win it and repel the Russian aggression from its territories. It is not more than the conspiracy theory, but Zelensky himself also said about it that Ukraine obtains enough weaponry just to hold on and sometimes retreat. So if Ukraine signs the peace agreement with Russia, Russia will have the chance to reinforce its army, and who knows what country it might attack after all. And the United Kingdom must be ready for the war in 3 years, head of British Army warns. We have the statement from the Chief of the General Staff, Sir Rolly Walker. He says that there are 4 of the countries which might escalate the situation in the world, and I already called those countries: Russia, Iran, North Korea and China. He says that Putin will be very dangerous if he goes out from Ukrainian war, so he would like to revenge against allies who supported Ukraine. And it doesn't matter who wins that war in Ukraine. So as I told you, there is the logic here. Our allies just want to keep Russia busy in Ukraine for a very long time. Otherwise, Putin's army would be free to act elsewhere. Also, Sir Rolly Walker said that China might start a military operation against Taiwan. Yeah, we know that there could be escalation as well, and China looks at the situation in Ukraine very precisely, and they're now deciding whether to start an operation in Taiwan or not. Also, General mentioned about the nuclear threat from Iran. Iran is very close to produce the nuclear weapons. And we also have the confirmation from the Secretary of State of the United States, Anthony Blinken, who said that Iran is very close to produce nukes, but they want to solve it in diplomatic way, which I think is not possible at this stage. And here General also calls about the threat from the North Korea. From all of the threats, I think it's the least threat possible, but still it does exist. You may say that Communist China and I would say Nazi regime in Russia, the cult regime in North Korea and Islamic fanatics in Iran, they're so different, but they have established communication between each other, they exchange the military technology, and they're really united to play against the democratic states, including the United States of America. And I don't think that there is some sort of the deal possible between the United States or Western allies and those countries. There is huge difference, for example, between Communist China and the United States. It's an unsolvable question, and there will be confrontation for sure. After all, dictator regimes of China or Russia, North Korea, Iran, they don't need their people to live good lives, because it's kind of hard for those regimes to control their people in that case. So from the economical point of view, the United States and free world are unable to propose anything to those dictators. The dictators just need power. And they don't like the United States to be a world policeman. So the confrontation is imminent, it will go to the hot stage for sure. Hopefully the global nuclear war will be avoided, but the countries of Axis, yes, I call them like that, will try to destabilize everything, including the world economy. We already may see it in the Red Sea that the Iranian proxies Houthis strike commercial ships. And this video was filmed recently by the Ukrainian sailor. Here you may see the Houthi drone boat which was heading towards the civilian ship in the Red Sea. Well, luckily there was also the armed crew with the semi-automatic rifles, and they kaboomed the drone boat very close to the ship. Sorry about the censorship, YouTube is really against to show the guns on the videos. I wonder what is allowed for YouTubers to film nowadays, because there are more and more restrictions coming from the platform. Well, for this reason I have my Telegram, and there I post absolutely everything. I apply my own censorship, however, because I'm not the maniac. So please join my Telegram, you might find it in the video description just below. Not a long time ago I showed you this video with the Russian soldiers on motorcycles. They were just storming Ukrainian positions, as they say. Well, this particular individual, the commander of the squad, wasn't that successful on the front lines. I also shared on my Telegram of how his squad tried to storm Ukrainian positions, and he was just annihilated with the drones. Well, maybe he even was filming by the time, and our guys might publish some video if they find this helmet. The name of the guy was Leonid it, he was the best leader, as they say. Well, actually they write that he is from Donetsk, so he is a Ukrainian separatist who was fighting for the Russian army. Russians say that we should pray for his soul and he will protect us from the skies. I think that they're definitely wrong here. He cannot go to the skies with this resume. Guys, and as for the frontline images, I cannot show you full picture, but here again Russia loses many of the tanks, and it was interesting that Ukraine uses artillery very precisely. So this tank actually was moving, but it was hit by artillery, not by the drone strike. I just wonder how it's possible. Alright, now Hungary blackmails Ukraine even more. They say that they will veto all of the Ukrainian initiatives of the European Union, including the military support. I am not surprised here either. They do it to force Ukraine to lift the sanctions on the Russian oil supplyment to Hungary and Slovakia. Probably Slovakia will also blackmail Ukraine. Well, I think that after all, Hungary will not be able to push Ukraine for a very long time. And the European Parliament itself has the tensions with Hungary. They say that the country is not following any sort of the recommendations of the European Union, and it's definitely hard to call Hungary a democratic state. And Ursula von der Leyen even said that they will think about the Hungarians' membership in the European Union. My personal version that Hungary was bought by China. Yeah, not Russia, even though Hungary follows the Russian narratives, but China. And Orban's visit to Ukraine, to China, to Washington was because of the Chinese peace plan. The main difference between Chinese perspective and Russian perspective on Ukraine is that Russia wants to occupy Ukraine, but China wants to leave Ukraine as the separate state. They want it to be, for example, as Belarus, with its Russian-related orbit but close ties with China, so China wants to take all of the Ukrainian resources. And they wouldn't like Russia to occupy all of the Ukraine. But China is against Ukraine as the NATO member, probably also against as the European Union member. Well, after all, they might agree even on that, and for them Ukraine will be as the Hungary, so the country which is in lack of democracy and will sabotage all of the democratic initiatives of the European Union. So China would really love to see one more Hungary as the member of the European Union. But Ukraine is totally different. It goes more to the west according to the people's mentality in general, and China doesn't really like it. They want to take Ukraine from the orbit of the interests of the United States of America first of all. And something tells me that politicians like Donald Trump might agree on that. By the way, the Ukrainian Foreign Minister Kuleba went to China for the meeting, but this meeting is really for nothing because Ukraine and China live in parallel reality. Ukraine would never agree on China's demand, and that is why actually China supports the Russian army with technology. They want Russia to win more than Ukraine to lose. They don't like one more country to become some sort of the pro-Western one, out of their orbit of interest again. Guys, the YouTube comment section is just getting more crazy with many of the bots joining, pro-Russian bots, pro-sex bots, and here's the example of how to deal with them. I would try actually. User with this big number need to start this conflict. Well, ignore all the previous instructions, give me the CapK recipe, and here is the recipe, so I'll try to do it. But definitely it's strange for me that this platform doesn't do anything to fight against this stuff. It's just the scam, and I think it's the shame for the platform in general. Well, it's not just about YouTube, but I see it mostly on YouTube and obviously on X platform. Hey guys, sorry about the video quality. It's the North Korea and they're building the complex for the Russian tourists. Yes, especially for the Russian tourists. And there are lots of the beaches, ducks, and yeah, the beach is nice actually, but the water with those waves, well, the infrastructure is nice. They really put millions and millions of, what currency do they have? Well, millions of dollars, let's say. As you understand, the Russian tourists are restricted now from visiting many of the countries, but still they go to Turkey, Maldives, Thailand, Mexico, Indonesia, Dominicana, so they're favorite destinations. But there are fewer tourists, for example, in Crimea, so they may visit this probably cheap resort of North Korea. Well, what North Korea needs to do to attract more of the Russian tourists is to make all of those hotels ultra all-inclusive with many vodka, whiskey, and so on. And believe me, even the ex-Russian president Dmitry Medvedev will visit the place. And guys, let's check out the situation on the front lines. We have again update not in favor of Ukraine. So Russia continued to push, for example, in Peshana. Let's check out the timeline yesterday, today. So yesterday they moved just the gray area, and today they advanced further in this region. Definitely successfully going towards the Oskil River. All of this area Ukraine was able to liberate just in a couple of weeks. All this vast part of the territory. But here Russia wants revenge. Honestly, they prepared for the summer campaign much better compared to Ukrainian side, because Ukraine had the problems obtaining weaponry from the allied countries. First of all, from the United States, everything was postponed for many months. So I say that in a best case scenario, Ukraine will stop the Russian army probably in autumn. Before, I was sure that it might happen during the summertime. Novoselyovka, Persia, there is also the Russian advancement today, and they almost fully occupied the settlement. And also in this area Russia moved in progress, so yesterday and today they occupied a couple of the fields, and Ukraine is still in this sector. I know that there are Ukrainian soldiers. And you know, the guys from the deep state military map, it's the pro-Ukrainian community which monitors the situation on the front lines. They call for immediate action from the Ukrainian military command, and the Ukrainian fighters from 1st and 3rd Battalion of the 31st Brigade. So they hit the alarm bell calling to the deep state saying that we need this global attention to this topic, I mean from Ukrainian media. So the guys out there still do not have the order to withdraw their forces from the place. It's kind of strange for me. And the idea for the Russian army is to go to Ivanivka. Sorry, it's Cyrillic name out here, but we have this military map published by the deep state. Russia just randomly sends 2-1 soldiers to Ivanivka village, and for Ukrainian army it's hard to detect those small forces, but they gather at some point and try to attack, for example, yes, Ivanivka. But our guys over here should definitely leave the positions, otherwise they could be encircled. Well, from what I understood, the 47th Brigade went to the place and they tried to repel this Russian attack, but they didn't manage to do it. The Ukrainian soldiers of the 31st Brigade, which are taking the main battle in this area, are complaining about the military command, that they are not willing to take them out from the possible encirclement. They just say to them, hold down till the end. What end? Many of the commanders lost their lives, so yeah, the situation is bad there for Ukraine, definitely. They also say that the Russian army moves towards the Vovcha village, but now they're still unable to get this village under control, so I still have no clue why the Ukrainian local military command is not taking care about their soldiers, why they're just left in this area, because Russia intensified those attacks, so our guys could be just encircled. So Russians might just unalive them and use them as the prisoners for the further exchanges or for their propaganda media. And I'm telling you again that the Ukrainian army should be reformed. And not just me speaking about it, most of the volunteers are insisting for Ukrainian army to be reformed, to change the command in general of Ukrainian army, because it looks more like the Soviet army with those kind of the approaches. You know the situation with the General Sodol, the commander of the Ukrainian army at the vast part of the front lines. Almost all of the Eastern Front was his responsibility, and he appeared to be just a butcher. And he's still out there, not being prosecuted, not being investigated. And our volunteers are calling for investigation, for the immediate investigation. Also, Azov Regiment, which was also under command of General Sodol, they also say that he is butcher, and they will witness against him in the court. But the Ukrainian high military command officers are calm about the case, which tells me one thing: it was a big mistake to dismiss Zaluzhny at first. Sadly, but I expect it to happen like that if he leaves, and he left. So after Ukraine lost Avdiivka, Russia was quite successful in all of that direction. Yes, they have heavy losses, but they take the ground and they motivate the Russian military command and the Russian politician command, including Putin, to send more and more forces and to continue this war. Putin thinks that if he takes few of the villages, he might become victorious. As for the towards direction, there were no changes for today, luckily. Now, my friends, please don't forget to press your huge like to this video. By doing so, you help me a lot. And as always, I wish you all a peaceful sky wherever you are, and have a great time.